Hey, welcome to Rockoli, YouTube's best channel for record collectors. This week, I want to talk about a lovable hipster, Mac DeMarco. I want to discuss the best pressing of Jethro Tull's Aqualung, and share some of my recent pickups. One from a fellow VC member. Stay tuned.
Get ready for Rockoli, bringing music to you. Rockoli, rock and roll, metal and country too. Get ready for the record of the week. Get ready for Rockoli.
Record of the week is Mac DeMarco's 2. This is his second album, so its title is fitting. Very, very different from his first album. On his first album, he does these creepy, deep vocals, just a really mixed bag. Didn't really care for it. The second album, he takes a completely different direction, and he's developed these like crooning vocals over this really jangly, almost out of tune guitar, very pop oriented, catchy choruses, and this album is really good. I also really like the follow-up called Salad Days. Excellent album. So if you haven't heard of Mac DeMarco, I definitely recommend giving him a try. A really unique sound from his guitar, and he's an analog guy through and through. Really enjoy this album. Some tracks you might give a try are Freaking Out the Neighborhood, Cooking Up Something Good, Ode to Viceroy, Brand of Cigarettes. Like I said, he's got this crooning voice and these kind of odd, goofy lyrics. For as simplistic as it is, it's also has some depth and is interesting. So anyway, his recordings are very high quality. Like I said, he records all analog, and they sound fantastic. And I definitely recommend giving this one a spin if you haven't already. Alright, now it's time for Best Press. If you've been following the channel, you know I'm a firm believer that not all pressings are created equal. So I like to take albums where I have 2 or more pressings and talk about my thoughts, and maybe save you from buying a horrible reissue, or if you're looking for the ultimate pressing, maybe I can shed light, share my opinion, and maybe your ears will agree with mine. So first up we have Jethro Tull's Aqualung, and this is the Classic Records pressing. Classic Records was an audiophile label that has since closed. They were bought up by Analog Productions. Fantastic label. This was released by them, and my good friend Ron Beaudry, he has this version. He also has the 4LP 45 RPM single-sided edition that was released by Classic Records, and in his opinion, that is hands down the best version to own of this album. Now, I don't have that one. I've never listened to that one. It's very hard to find, and if you do find it, it's ultra expensive. Also, even if it were easy to come by, 4 single-sided discs, that's a lot of getting up and flipping discs. Not for everybody, but if you're going for the ultimate sound, that's the one Ron recommends. And I've had this 33 RPM version, and Classic Records, they cut all analog. They do the deluxe original packaging. So the cover on this is that pebbled cover, so that there's like a canvas texture, and it's gorgeous, and it sounds great. Now this recording is notorious for being just a poor recording, and there have been several attempts to perfect this one. There's a Mobile Fidelity version, the Classic Records version. There's also a DCC version of this, and it's kind of debated between the Classic Records, DCC, and MoFi on which one's preferred. And I've always really liked this pressing, and thought it was fantastic. But Steven Wilson has been doing remixed versions of Jethro Tull's discography. Aqualung received his remix treatment. So from what I understand, he takes the original analog file, he converts it to digital, and he does his work on touching up sounds, cleaning things up, bringing things forward, bringing things back. For my analog purists out there, I challenge you to listen to the Steven Wilson mix of Aqualung. It is fantastic. To me, it blows away the classic records 33 RPM. The clarity of the vocals and the instrumentation is sublime. The soundstage, again, is just wider, and there's this presence on this recording that is just not there with that classic records pressing. I compare these records, I A and B them track to track, and when I put this one on, I just don't want to take it off. It makes the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's utterly incredible. Highly, highly recommended. And this version is not very expensive at all. And it also comes with this awesome booklet talking about the band and the recording. Just a really, really well done packaging. The only thing I don't like is that they didn't use the pebble cover like the original, and they've also clarified that this isn't the original mix by just putting the Steven Wilson mix on the cover, which is understandable because it is a remix, but it's fantastic. And if you love this album and you haven't given this version a listen, I definitely think you should give it some time. If you haven't ever heard this album, listen to any version you can grab, but I think the Steven Wilson mix is the one to get. Not only is it the most cost-effective, I, in my opinion, believe it's the best version. But again, I haven't heard the 45 RPM version by Classic Records. However, Analog Productions is supposedly going to be releasing the UHQR version of this album in the near future. They haven't had a pre-order date yet, but there's a little teaser in my Jimi Hendrix UHQR that I purchased. So be on the lookout for that. That might give this one a run for its money, but still, it's going to cost probably quadruple of what you can pick this one up for. And this one is phenomenal. Alright, it's time for some recent pickups. Alright, first up, I have a 7-inch single by Morrissey. It's the Roy Orbison cover, It's Over, from his covers album, California Sun. That covers album has kind of received mixed reviews, but I absolutely love it. I think he does a great job with those covers and puts his own spin on them, and I think his choices are just really interesting. There's several on there I just would have never imagined he would have covered, but he did, and I think they sound great. I usually don't pick up 7-inch singles, but when it comes to Morrissey, I just have a hard time saying no. Next up is from the VC, Billy Hurst. As I've said before, I'm a big 90s country fan, and I actually saw Melinda Murphy, no relation, post about receiving this album from Billy, and Billy has his own channel. I reached out to Billy and asked if he had any copies left, and he did, and he sent me one, and he signed it. Anyway, it is definitely that 90s country sound. Really been enjoying listening to this one, and it's definitely takes you back to the 90s. He has a nice, powerful voice that goes great with that 90s style country. And anyway, it's a good listen. Next up we have Candlemass, King of the Grey Islands. This album, I believe, immediately follows the Candlemass self-titled album, which was the Return of Messiah. I talked about that in the past. That album for me was just a little underwhelming. Messiah has these incredible vocals, and that was his return, and I don't know, I felt like the songwriting was just a little weak on that album. In his return, he kind of just had the same old tricks, and you could tell his voice aged a little bit. Not a bad album, but just wasn't what I expected. This is the first album we see Robert Lowe as on vocals. So, Messiah is pretty big shoes to fill. Incredible vocalist. And so I think, I kind of had my expectations low for this one. But man, I was wrong. This is a really, really good album. And Robert Lowe can sing. He has a different style, but he still has that operatic delivery and that high register that I really like, and I'm impressed. I am impressed. So this one is very good, and I highly recommend listening to this if you're like me and you're pretty new to Candlemass and discovering their discography. This one's good. Recommend it. Next up, this one is not a recent pickup. I've had this one. The Avenged Sevenfold live album, Diamonds in the Rough. This was the Record Store Day version from a few years ago, and it came with a DVD, but they just reissued this album. And they gave it a new cover. It's pressed on clear vinyl, and it includes more tracks. It doesn't have the DVD, but it sounds fantastic, and the bonus tracks they included are really, really good. So I'm really, really happy to pick this one up. And then finally, I have Candlemass's Death Magic Doom. This one is more difficult to follow, but it has that vocalist Robert Lowe on it, and again, just a really, really good album. Really, really impressed. Honestly, Candlemass just has a great discography. So if you're looking for a band to kind of dip your toe into the doom metal genre, I highly recommend Candlemass. And I would just start with their first album and go chronologically. It's very, very impressive, and I really, really have been digging the King of the Grey Islands and this Death Magic Doom. Well, that's it for this week, guys. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, commenting. I'd love to know your thoughts on Mac DeMarco, Aqualung. Have you listened to the Steven Wilson mix? I'd love to know your thoughts on remixing albums, digital versus analog, anything of the sort. Love hearing your suggestions for new music to listen to. And I'm still going through... I have a nice list of new music to listen to, and I've really been enjoying it. Can't thank you guys enough. Really appreciate it. Till next time, you've had a healthy dose of Rockoli. I'll see you.